So we just had the reveal of Season 14 of Diablo 4, or more specifically, what we can expect for the PTR of Season 14. And there are some pretty massive new additions and some pretty massive system changes, one of which is what I want to go over in this video, that being that all unique items will now be able to be mythic items, and with that, they will be pretty heavily upgraded. And there's also some pretty big changes around uniques in general and around the current mythics we have in Diablo 4. So I want to go over all of this because a lot of people are kind of confused on what has been announced for this system so far. And I did also want to mention that there is a 100% chance that a bunch of stuff that was revealed for the PTR of Season 14 will be balanced or changed in some way before the actual launch of Season 14. That is guaranteed. And the main thing I want to go over in this video is this new system as a design philosophy, because while there will definitely be balance changes and things along those lines, the direction of this system is something that is absolutely still going to be in Season 14. Now, I wanted to start off with what's happening to the mythics we currently have in Season 13 of Diablo 4. And these mythics are now going to be called iconic mythics. I'm assuming that's the official name because the developers in the Q&A called them iconic mythics, and I don't think they're being called that, or I don't think they called them that in the official blog post for the PTR. My assumption is that iconic mythics is the official name, but outside of their name change, there was some pretty big balancing around some of them, like the Arrow Perdition helmet that was used in basically 100% of the builds in the game got completely gutted down from 80% to 15%, but that comes along with a pretty massive change to these iconic mythics in that they will now only have one set stat, so only one static roll, and all of the other affixes on them will now be randomly rolled. Now, we don't actually know if these other affixes that are randomly rolled, if they will have any unique possibilities on them. Like, for instance, right now the Arrow Perdition has crit as an affix on it. You can't normally get crit on helmets. And this is true for pretty much all of the mythics. They have stats you can't normally get. And it has not yet been confirmed if we can still get randomly rolled stats you can't get in those slots normally, or if these mythics will now just have random rolls between all of the affixes you can normally get on that slot. And likewise, we don't know if these affix rolls are going to be higher if they're higher on mythics right now. For instance, if you go look at the Ring of Starless Skies, one of the big reasons why that ring is still so heavily used in a lot of builds is because its actual affix stat rolls are much higher than you can normally get on rings. So while these affixes are going to be randomly rolled, we don't know if they're going to be higher rolls. We don't know if the actual roll ranges of these affixes are going to be always capped out. Like on mythics right now, you don't have variations in the affix number. Like if you get a Ring of Starless Skies, the attack speed will always be the same unless it's a greater affix. So there's a lot of confirmation we need around these iconic mythics. And on top of that, these iconic mythics still can't be rolled or modified in the Herodric Cube, because that's one of the big changes for unique items going into Season 14. They're able to have their stats re-rolled. That can't be done with iconic mythics. And because iconic mythics are going to have random affix rolls now, and they can't be rolled in the cube, I really don't know how these things aren't kind of dead on arrival, because even though a lot of these mythics can actually get better stats if they're randomly rolled between the stats all other items have in those slots, the amount of mythics you get is significantly lower than even being able to farm any random unique item. So the chance at you getting the correct rolls you want to make one of these mythic items even as strong as they are in Season 13 right now is a very, very low chance. So it seems that these iconic mythics are just going to be DOA on the launch of Season 14. Unless they change something with these, you probably won't be using them unless it's something that has a super strong special effect, which I think Ring of Starless Skies is really the only one that's going to have that. Or if you just get ungodly lucky and get crazy good rolls on a mythic, which again, they're still mythics and they haven't said anything about these iconic mythics having higher drop rates going into Season 14. So I really am not seeing how these iconic mythics are just kind of going to be ignored now. And that's actually one of the reasons I want to start by going over what's happening with these iconic mythics, because this is the part of this update that I have no idea why they're doing it, and this is the part of the update I really don't like. It makes legitimately zero sense for these iconic mythics that we currently have in the game that are currently statically rolled to now be almost fully randomly rolled going into Season 14, because with their rarity, you have a very, very low chance to get the rolls you're actually looking for on these items. So iconic mythics, unless something is changing, probably going to be pretty much dead outside of getting some very lucky rolls for only people who get lucky to get good rolls on them. But the new system of mythics, which are just going to be unique items being able to become mythics, I actually like, and I think it is better than the system we have right now, even though I would much rather have normal uniques going back to what they previously were, or some iteration of that where they had more unique affixes on them that were statically rolled. Because going into Season 14, unique items are still going to be randomly rolled. I think they're all still going to have the one static roll, which on almost every item is just like main stat, which I kind of don't like on any offensive unique, but pretty much all uniques will still have the one affix roll that's static on it. And outside of that, all of the other affixes on uniques are still going to be randomly rolled, but going to Season 14, you will be able to change those affix rolls in the cube. So you'll be able to use focus and chaotic reroll on unique items going into Season 14. So while I think going back to mythics, at least having a couple static, more unique affixes on them, this is still just an upgrade compared to the system we have in Season 13. Completely randomly rolled uniques with no ways to augment them is just worse than having randomly rolled uniques that you can augment. So that is an upgrade. Just me personally, I would much more rather have at least a couple of the rolls on unique items to be unique statically rolled affixes. So if you compare just normal uniques in Season 13 to Season 14, really the only difference is that you will be able to roll their affixes in the cube, kind of like how you can roll affixes on just normal items. But I do think it is limited to chaotic and focused reroll, which is really the only things you need when the item already has all the affixes on it. But then we have the introduction of the new system that is tied to uniques, and that is that every unique item in the game, whether it's a generic unique or a class unique, every single unique in the game will be able to be turned into a mythic, or more specifically, will just be able to be a mythic. And they've really only talked about two ways for this to happen to unique items. The first one is that anytime an ancestral unique item drops, it can just be a mythic unique, so an upgraded version of that normal unique that turns it into a mythic. The second way is that in Season 14, we will be able to get a seasonal currency that you can turn a unique item into a mythic. And the developers did say that currently this ability to use the seasonal currency to turn a unique into a mythic unique will be seasonal, so specific to Season 14, but this doesn't mean they aren't going to carry it into the future because it is already limited. So if you go and upgrade a unique into a mythic unique through the Heradra Cube, you can only equip one of these new mythics with that method. But through just getting one of these new mythic drops, you'll be able to equip any amount of these new mythics that you want. So you could technically just equip a full set of new mythic items because they are just upgraded versions of the current uniques we have right now. And the effects these uniques get when they turn into a mythic is the real important part. Now, the first thing is that the affixes they roll will always be a max roll. Now, uniques are still going to be randomly rolled. All of them will be max rolled, and then you'll still be able to go roll them in the cube. And my assumption with this is that when you go and roll these mythics in the Heradra Cube, that these stats will still stay capped out. So that will probably make rolling these even easier when compared to rolling something like legendaries that will have variable affix ranges. Now, this doesn't mean that they are going to be greater affixes or anything like that. They're just capped on the normal affix roll amount, and then you'll still be able to get them greater affixes like you can normal uniques. And on top of that, the unique effect on these are also going to be increased by 30%. Now, I think this one is actually a little bit more important and and probably a bit more of the intention of why the system even exists, because currently right now there are actually a ton of uniques that aren't really used or aren't even used in the builds they should be used in, because their unique effects just aren't much stronger, or in a good amount of cases are actually weaker than the legendary aspects you could put on that piece of gear. And most of the time it really just comes down to that legendary aspect just either say giving a better defensive increase through like a chest piece or legs, or for offensive pieces, legendary aspects just being able to give you a higher damage boost than you could get with that unique piece of gear. But if you slap an additional 30% on top of basically any unique, its damage increase is probably going to be better than pretty much any legendary aspect you could get in that slot. But because the special effect of most of the uniques in the game are focused around a specific ability or a specific tag or something like that, you can't just stack every unique in the game to get damage boost, because most of them won't affect more than one or two things. Now, there are definitely things I like and dislike with these systems. First off, the iconic mythics, like I went over, I don't know what they're doing with these. They kind of just seem like they're not going to be very good anymore, which kind of doesn't make sense because they're still supposed to be the most rare items in the game. And because of how these new mythics are going to be rolled, it sounds like they're going to be more common, just because anytime you get an ancestral unique, it can just be a mythic, sounding like they are going to be more common than the mythics we currently have in the game, which does make sense. But these iconic mythics, having these randomly rolled stats you can't change in the cube, you would need to get a ton of those to make that worthwhile in any way. So unless something's changed, I think iconic mythics are kind of just a dead rarity for the most part. I also have zero clue of why they are calling these new upgraded unique items mythics. They showed off some of them and they seem to have a very similar color to mythics in the game right now. I think the little animation on the item card is a little different, but it seems they're basically going to be the same color. Their special effect is the same color when they are a mythic, and they're called mythics, while the old mythics are being called iconic mythics. I have no idea why they didn't just name these new upgraded uniques something different and give them a different color, or keep in the same color as uniques and just add like a different background glow like we had with chaos uniques. No idea why they decided to make it confusing and just have two different rarities with two different properties, both being the same colors and both being called mythics. We also don't know what you're going to get for salvaging these different mythics. Like, are the iconic mythics still going to work off resplendent sparks, and the new mythics are just going to give you normal stuff unique would if you salvage it? So we don't know if there's going to be another new resource for the new mythics, or will salvaging a new mythic still give you a resplendent spark that could be used on crafting iconic mythics? So there is still a lot of specifics we need to know about this, but that's something I just cannot wrap my head around, why they would actually decide to do this, because all this is doing is making it more confusing. The new system of being able to have a much more rare version of existing uniques that are just buffed up versions of normal uniques is generally a good system, but I have zero clue as to why they just made them the same color and same name as an already existing rarity. It makes absolute zero sense why that's the case, especially since these are still two different item types or two different item rarities. Iconic mythics are still very different from the new mythics. The new mythics are, again, just upgraded uniques that will still be able to be rolled in the cube like all uniques will be able to going into season 14, but the iconic mythics, or the mythics we have in the game right now, still won't be able to be rolled in the cube, even though they are now also getting almost all random rolls like the normal uniques we have right now. So I have no idea why they're doing this, unless there is something else that they just haven't told us about with iconic mythics. I have no idea why that will even be its own rarity anymore. It really doesn't make sense with how heavily they nerfed pretty much the only widely used mythic, why they will have randomly rolled stats, which means that they will be used a lot less in general. So I really don't know why they're doing a couple of these things, but like I mentioned, the system of uniques now being able to have their affixes rolled in the the cube and them just being able to be upgraded or just get upgraded versions of them, I think are generally good systems and better than what we have right now for uniques. But again, the naming, the coloring, and whatever they're doing with iconic mythics, I have no idea what they're doing with those. And if anything were to change going into season 14, or more specifically the pre-patch to season 14, which is where they implement all of their learnings from the PTR, if anything out of these systems are going to change in that upcoming pre-season 14 patch, it will definitely be around iconic mythics, because I have no idea what they're trying to do with those. So I think overall, this is just going to be a better system for uniques than what we currently have. Just like mentioned, there are some weird stuff that I don't understand why they're doing it with these new updates. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.